22 years ago today, Celtic played Porto in the UEFA Cup Final. Though the night ended in heartbreak, when it was all said and done, there was a tremendous sense of pride amongst the Celtic support. Less than a decade earlier, the club was at rock bottom. Even just 3 years earlier, during the John Barnes reign, this sort of turnaround was unthinkable. The run to the final was magical, with plenty of incredible memories created along the way. However, the match itself and failure to capture another European trophy still remains the most painful regret in the careers of many players involved. Martin O'Neill arrived at Celtic in 2000, at which point it had been 20 years since the club survived in European football beyond Christmas. Even in his first 2 seasons of amazing domestic results, the club were knocked out of Europe by Bordeaux and Valencia to extend that streak further. But in December 2002, Celtic eliminated Celta Vigo in the round of 32 to finally end the wait. And it was really at this point that the fans began to believe the team could go all the way. Excitement was at a fever pitch before the match for both Celtic and Porto. O'Neill stated, "We are aware of the fantastic history the club possesses, but now it is up to us to do something for ourselves. The thing is to embrace history, don't be frightened of it." Meanwhile, over in Portugal, Porto fans knew they were on to something special themselves. Jpse Mourinho had turned the club's fortunes around, winning the title in his first full season in charge the previous year to end a 3-year run without the championship. Mourinho had a squad filled with exciting talent, built around Brazilian-born Portuguese international playmaker Deco. Despite this, in the build-up to the game, the Portuguese coach said, "It will be great if Porto win, and I will be very happy, but maybe if Celtic win, it will be because they deserve it." The way in which they got to the final, by beating Blackburn, Celta Vigo, Stuttgart and Liverpool, made it much more difficult for them to arrive in the final than Porto. Then Prime Minister and notorious war criminal Tony Blair even lent his support to Celtic in the lead up, writing a letter to manager Martin O'Neill, "I would like to wish you the very best of luck and I hope you return as the winners of the UEFA Cup. It is no more than you deserve." The final was held in Seville, with over 80,000 Celtic fans descending on the city. The pre-match atmosphere was unforgettable. Jovial, friendly and colourful, but without any of the trouble that so often creates negative headlines when teams from Scotland or England travel abroad. Celtic fans received awards from both FIFA and UEFA for the fans' behaviour, winning the FIFA Fair Play Award that year and being presented with a formal recognition from UEFA at a home match the following season. It was boiling hot in Spain on the day of the game, and even by the 8:45 PM local time of kickoff, it was still around 30 degrees. The Celtic players weren't used to this, so undoubtedly the conditions favoured Porto. However, Celtic had overcome the odds so many times on the way to the final, so it was just one more obstacle they needed to try to overcome. Since arriving at Celtic, Martin O'Neill had primarily utilised a 3-5-2 formation, and it was no different on this occasion. He named what was the quintessential starting 11 for his tenure as manager. Rob Douglas in nets, Three centre-backs consisting of Johan Mjällby, Bobo Balde and Jos Valharn. Didier Agath on the right, Alan Thompson on the left. Paul Lambert, Neil Lennon and Stilian Petrov as the central midfield three. And of course, Chris Sutton and Henrik Larsson up top. The substitute bench consisted of Magnus Hedman, Jackie McNamara, Ulrik Larsson, Mohamed Silla, Jamie Smith, David Fernandez and Sean Maloney. The big absence for Celtic in the game was John Hartson, who missed out due to a back injury. When the cameras rolled, it was apparent Celtic fans had taken over the stadium. ITV commentator Barry Davis said, "I've seen a few of these European finals, at least over 25 now. I don't think I've ever seen a support like this as provided by the supporters of Celtic. It's magnificent." Right from kick-off, it was obvious both teams were initially nervous. Neither settled in the early stages, with Celtic defender Jos Valharn earning a booking after just 8 minutes. Porto were the first side to settle into the game properly and took control as half-time approached. Their passing was more controlled and refined. In truth, Martin O'Neill's Celtic side were hard-working and physical, built entirely around the world-class Henrik Larsson up top. Porto were more of a technical team and their confidence grew as the game went on. What unfortunately also became apparent was one of the dark arts Jpse Mourinho sides became all too well known for. The time-wasting antics began right from the off, with the Porto players taking every opportunity to roll around and delay the restart of play at every stoppage. Goalkeeper Vitor Baia was particularly guilty of this, a grudge Martin O'Neill still holds against him to this day. The referee for the game was Slovakian official Jpse Michel. Michel will go on to have an incredible career, officiating at European Championships, World Cups and even the Champions League final. But for his handling of the 2003 UEFA Cup Final, Jpse Michel will always be a loathed figure amongst the Celtic support. He did nothing to curtail Porto's near constant play acting and time wasting, almost encouraging it by failing to make any attempt to sanction it. On Michel's performance, Martin O'Neill would say, "The referee looked very young and he will learn from this. He will learn that if you score a goal, the kickoff should not be 5 minutes later," which happened in the game. Once the goal started, they began to flow. Derlei gave Porto the lead in the first minute of first half stoppage time, but Celtic rallied and came out swinging for the second half, equalising through Henrik Larsson just 2 minutes after the restart. Russian midfielder Dmitry Alanachev put Porto 2-1 up after 54 minutes, only for Henrik to equalise once again 3 minutes later. Normal time played out and extra time began. This was played under the bizarre silver goal rule, a short-lived experiment UEFA quickly abandoned, which meant if a team took the lead in the first half of extra time and held on until the half-time whistle, they would be declared winners. Despite Bobo Balde being shown a deserved red card just 5 minutes into extra time, the rule never came into play as the score remained 2-2 at the interval. With just 5 minutes remaining, Porto scored what turned out to be the winning goal again through Derlei. A heartbreaking moment, and it looked like Celtic had completely ran out of gas. There was an opportunity to cross the ball into the box in injury time from 30 yards out, but Sean Maloney overhit the set piece and sent the ball straight out of play. With that, it was all over. Due to the unappreciated tactics employed by Porto players throughout the match, some Celtic fans in the stadium stayed on and booed as the Porto players lifted the trophy. But the main reason so many Celtic fans remained was to show their appreciation for Martin O'Neill and the players. The comeback the club had completed in the space of just a few years was nothing short of miraculous. The players may not have won on the night, but pride had well and truly been restored for the Celtic fans. For an entire generation of supporters, Henrik Larsson is the ultimate Celtic hero. His performance on this night, which included Henrik scoring his 200th goal for the club, was sensational. While a lot of his teammates struggled, Henrik stood up and delivered, but the memory is still incredibly painful for the King of Kings. Even decades later, he has said, "I still haven't gotten over that one. I wish I'd done more because I know how much it meant to the Celtic fans." But all fans know Henrik did everything he could and was a giant on the night. The pain is still alive for those old enough to remember the 2003 UEFA Cup Final, but the journey along the way brought so much joy for the entire Celtic fan base. The atmosphere and camaraderie in Seville was once in a lifetime stuff, something jealous fans of other clubs will never experience. Even the Mayor of Seville went on record to say, "You should feel proud to have fans such as these in Glasgow who give their city and country a good name." It was the pinnacle of an unforgettable time in Celtic history. The memory of the 2003 UEFA Cup Final, for better or worse, will live on forever.